A very good morning, students. Welcome to your social science class. And today we will study history, and we'll study the chapter 7 of your history textbook, Our Past 3. And the chapter name is Civilizing the Native and Educating the Nation. So, in the previous chapter, we dealt with how the British rule affected the Rajas, the Nawabs, the peasants, and the tribals. But here in this chapter, we will see what implications it had for the lives of students, mainly the education sector, and us being teacher and students. This chapter is especially and particularly important. So I hope you are ready for this chapter. In this chapter, we will come to know how the British in India wanted not just territorial conquest or control over revenues. It was not just greed that kept the British in India, but it was a sense of civilizing a mission. So, how the Indians are to be civilized, or let's say how the Indians are to be educated. The British could not find any straightforward answers to this question. So, in this way, there arose the infamous debate, the greatest debate of all time. It can be said in terms in education, the Orientalist and Anglicist debate. I will describe these terms later in detail. So let's continue for now. We will see how Indians reacted to the British ideas and how they developed their own ideas, own views about how Indians are to be educated. But first of all, let's start with William Jones, the most prominent figure at that time in the education sector in British India. So first of all, a quick reminder, whenever I refer to the company, I will refer to the East India Company. At that time there were many East India companies, the British East India Company, the Dutch East India Company, the Portuguese East India Company, and the French one as well. But whenever I refer to as the East India Company, I will definitely refer to the British one. Okay, now let's know who William Jones was and how is he relevant to our current discussion. Let's discuss. So he arrived in Kolkata in 1783. He was appointed as a junior judge at the East India Company's Supreme Court at Kolkata. At that time it was known as Calcutta, and now it is known as Kolkata. And he was a linguist, and he knew Greek, Latin, French, Arabic, and Persian. My dear students, a linguist is someone who knows many languages and who have studied many languages, and definitely William Jones was one of them. In fact, he learned Sanskrit when he came to Calcutta from Pandits. And as he learned Sanskrit, he developed an interest in Indian texts, and he studied Indian law, philosophy, religion, politics, morality, arithmetic, medicine, and other sciences, the vast field of knowledge. So he believed that a new study of ancient texts could form the basis of future development of India. So and he was respectful towards Indian texts and culture, which will be contrasted to his successors, as we will see in this chapter. So this is a picture of William Jones learning Persian. It is taken from your textbook. See how attentive he is studying, and he must be a very brilliant mind, because to learn all this vast range of languages, that needs a brilliant mind. Now comes the Asiatic Society of Bengal. So soon after, William Jones discovered that his interests are shared by many other British officials. His interests were shared by officials like, to name, Thomas Henry Collerbook and Nathaniel Halhed, and they were busy discovering the ancient Indian heritage, the mastering Indian culture and languages, translating Sanskrit and Persian into English. And William Jones, what he did, he approached them And together with them, he set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal in January 1784 and started a journal called Asiatic Researches. Dear students, this is important. Who established the Asiatic Society of Bengal? Sir William Jones. When? January 1784. And what was the journal published from this society? Namely the Asiatic Researches. This was a vital point in Indian history because it marked the beginning of Orientalist research in India by the British. Those with a scholarly knowledge and study of the languages and culture of Asia are called Orientalists. Orientalist is a Latin word which literally translate into as East, mainly Asia, and those who study the Orient, they are Orientalists. Jones and Colebrook and others in the Asiatic Society Bengal represented a particular attitude towards India which would later be contrasted with British officials. So let's know how is their attitude, how was the attitude of the Orientalists. So first of all, they shared a deep respect for Indian culture, in fact they shared respect for both of India's culture and the culture of the West. They felt that the Indian civilization has attained its glory in the ancient past, but it is a big but it had subsequently declined, and in order to understand India better, it was necessary to rediscover its sacred texts, legal texts, and many other such texts that were produced in the ancient period. They believed that those texts could reveal the real ideas, laws of the Hindus and Muslims, the two majority religions of the subcontinent. We know Christianity come much later, and only a study of these texts could form the basis of development in India. They believe so. So what they did? They went on discovering ancient texts, understanding their meaning, translating them, and making their findings known to others. This project, they believe, would not only help the British to learn from Indian culture, but it would also help Indians themselves to rediscover their own heritage and understand the glories of their past, which is a glory that is lost. And in this process, the British would become the guardians as well as the masters of Indian culture, languages. So students, you see, they were very enthusiastic about their work and very much interested in India's past. In fact, they were so enthusiastic and influential, so much so that the company officials argued that the British ought to promote Indian rather than Western learning. They felt that institutions should be set up to encourage the study of ancient Indian texts and teach Sanskrit and Persian literature and poetry. The officials saw that the Hindus and Muslims ought to be taught what they were familiar with, not with the subjects that are alien to them. Only then they believed the British could hope to win a place in the heart of the natives. Native means the people who are indigenous to the land of India, not the British, not those company officials. And then only they believed that the alien rulers could expect to rule this vast country, and they could also expect respect from their subjects. So students, guess what they did next? They established a madrasa in Kolkata in 1781 to promote the study of Arabic, Persian, and Islamic law. Now, what is a madrasa? Can anybody tell? A madrasa is actually an Arabic word and which means a place for learning, any type of school or colleges. It's an Arabic place for learning. And with the same objective in mind, they established a Hindu college also in 1791, and this time it was in Benares, to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts that would be useful for the administration of the country. So you will notice that they were very much interested in India, and in the next slide, notice this picture, this monument. Carefully notice it. The picture depicts Warren Hastings in the middle. It was now in Victoria. It is now in Victoria Memorial. The Warren Hastings is in the middle, and a standing Pandit to his right, and a Munshi to his left. Who is a Munshi? Do you know? He is a person who can read, write, and teach Persian. Basically, a Munshi is a Persian expert, to say. So let's go further. So here comes the counter argument. So students, from this very point, the things will change a little, and it will become even more interesting to you, because not all the British officials were the same. They shared views that were different from each other, and many were there who strongly criticized the Orientalists. And who they were? They were those who wanted English education in India, and they were what we know as Anglicists. Although the term is not there in your textbook, I am using it to represent those bunch of people that oppose the Orientalists. Orientalists is there in your textbook. The Anglicist Orientalist debate. Let's dive in deeper into it. Those who wanted Western education, or English education to be specific, argued that the knowledge of the East was full of errors and unscientific thought. Eastern literature was non-serious and were light-hearted. So they believed that it was wrong on the part of the British to spend money on teaching and study of Sanskrit, Arabic, or Persian. So the most prominent critic among them was James Mill. So let's go a little further. Here you see Thomas Babington Macaulay. He is a very important figure in the context of this chapter, and you must have noticed, have heard about him as Lord Macaulay. He was the one who wrote a minute on Indian education. So the attack on Orientalists became even more sharper. Before that, let me put to you the views of James Mill. He declared that the British effort should not be to teach what the natives wanted, or to win a quote-unquote a place in the heart of the natives. The aim of education should be useful and practical, so the Indians should be made familiar with the scientific and technical advances of the West, rather than the poetry and sacred literature of the East. So the attack on the Orientalists became even more stronger by the 1930s. One of the most outspoken was the as we have already seen, this figure, Thomas Babington Macaulay. He saw India as an uncivilized country that needed to be civilized. No bunch of Eastern knowledge according to him, could be compared to England England literature. So we'll study now English Education Act of 1835. And before studying the English Education Act of 1835, we must know what prompted, what pushed for that act, because it was going fine with the study of the Arabic, Persian, or Sanskrit. So what prompted to the British administration to pass a new act, a new that was radically different from the previous ones? Because it was because Macaulay, he had already declared that a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. Now that is as derogatory as it can be, he argued that the British government should stop wasting money on promoting Oriental learning, because it has no practical purpose. For your purpose, students, let me add that Macaulay wrote his infamous Minute upon Indian Education, popularly known as Macaulay's Minute. There he strongly advocated for English education in India and stated that the English or the Western education, through that education, the British aim to create, quote unquote, a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, opinion, in morals, and in intellect. So you said you see that that is in complete disregard for our Indian culture and values. Macaulay emphasized that the need to teach English is very important. He felt that the knowledge of English would allow the Indians to read some of the finest literature in the world had ever produced, and it would take them, make them aware of the development in the Western world and philosophy. And for him, the teaching of English was a way to civilize the natives. Here we come to know about a specific perspective on how to civilize the natives of India. And following Macaulay, it was Macaulay's Minute upon Indian Education which prompted the British government to pass the English Education Act. Macaulay was not alone; there are many along with him who supported, but they are not very famous. So, what English Education Act of 1835 did? These are the decisions. First, to make English the medium of instruction for higher education. Second, to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions. Third, English textbooks are now to be produced for schools. And fourth, the pathshalas and madrasas are termed as quote unquote temples of darkness that were failing themselves into decay. So, how serious is this? You can see. This act is important because it marked what we call as paradigm shift in Indian education system. So, we will study about pathshalas in our subsequent section. So next we will study about the Wood's Dispatch. It is also important, of 1854. So what was it? So let's study Wood's Dispatch. In 1854, the Court of Directors of East India Company in London sent an educational dispatch to the Governor General of India, and the administration in India by the company was actually controlled by a Court of Directors back in England. So they sent a educational dispatch to India in 1854. This was known as Wood's Dispatch mainly because Charles Wood, the then president of the board of control for the company, it is after his name that the name comes Wood's Dispatch. It outlined the policy, educational policy that was to be followed in India, and In a similar tone with the English Education Act of 1854, it emphasized the practical benefits of Western learning as opposed to the Oriental knowledge. Some of the practical uses of the dispatch pointed was economic. So European learning, the Woods Dispatch report said, would enable the Indians to recognize the advantages that flow from the expansion of trade and commerce and make them see the importance of developing the resources of the country. Woods Dispatch also argued that the European learning would improve the moral character of the Indians, as if Indians were immoral before that. So it would also make them truthful, honest, and thus supply the company with civil servants. So you see, it was in their interest that they passed the English Education Act of 1835 and now the Woods Dispatch of 1854. The literature of the East was not only full of grave errors, it could also not instill in the people a sense of commitment to work, nor it could develop skills required for administration. So students, do you notice the Woods Dispatch basically seems familiar to Macaulay's Minute. In a sense, the Britishers actually wanted Indian servants to help them run the country. It was more about their needs than about about actually educating the Indians. Following the Woods Dispatch of several measures were taken or introduced by the British. The education departments of governments were set up to extend control all the matters of education by the government. Steps were taken to establish a system of university education. Now, this was an interesting period in Indian history because while there was a Sepoy mutiny, we call it the first war of independence nowadays. On the one hand, you have Sepoy mutiny of 1857. While we have a mutiny at places like Meerut or Delhi, universities were being established at Kolkata, Madras, and Bombay. So now we proceed further and let's study about the response of the Christian missionaries. So you are familiar with Christian missionaries because you must have seen at least a few missionaries in your lifetime, because they are the people who roam around propagating Christianity, and they wear a special dress and they are easy to recognize. The argument for practical education by Woods Dispatch was strongly criticized by the Christian missionaries. The missionaries felt that the education should attempt to improve the moral character of the people, and the morality could be improved only through Christian education. Dear students, for your information and to make things even more interesting, let me add that the British East India Company was opposed to missionary activities until 1813, as back as 1813. Why it is so? It feared that the missionary activities would provoke reaction from the local population, and make them more suspicious about the presence of British in India. So, unable to establish an institution within the British controlled territories, what the missionaries did? That they set up a mission in an area which was controlled not by the British East India Company but by the Dutch East India Company. At Serampore, the place was Serampore. A printing press was established in 1800 and a college was established in 1818. And there is no doubt that the British missionaries worked to propagate Christianity, but they also contributed immensely to the development of literature in regional languages. So we cannot deny that. That is true. And for instance, the first Assamese printed book, Dharma Pustakor Antibhag, and the first Assamese magazine, you must have remembered this, Orunodoy. Both were published from the from a missionary printing press from Sibsagar district. It was just to give you an idea of how they contributed to the development of Indian literature. These things apart, think of what happened to the already existing local schools. What was their plight? How they were affected by the British rules. These are the things that we will discuss in our next class or in our next video. This will be the topic in our next class. So students, I hope, and I hope, not only hope, I strongly urge you to go to this chapter until this part, and because in order to understand the next part of this chapter, you must understand this part of this chapter. And next part is I bet the next part is going to be even more interesting, and I will attach some quiz assignments to in the Google Classroom for you to complete, and you please look up to it. And for today, thank you and have a nice day ahead.